Hi everyone. I am Nat and welcome to this webinar on dyslexia in the workplace or dyslexia in the office. So normally it is just me who's head of community exceptional individuals and normally my colleague April, but April's on holiday today. Hope she's having a good one. But we've got our new volunteer, Garfield, who is joining us, who has kindly done the research for today. And Garfield's just going to be in the chat answering questions. So feel free to make him feel at home. Now, we do these every single week, and we do them on lots of different subjects. I notice some of you will probably be dyslexic. Some of you might just want to support your dyslexic colleagues. But whatever it is, I encourage you to keep active in the chat because I find these sessions work really good when people are active, when people are sharing knowledge and sharing their opinions. Individually, we might not be experts, but as a collective, definitely. Now, as an organization, we support all of neurodiversity. So that's those who are dyslexic, dyspraxic, autistic, ADHD, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, could be OCD, could be Tourette's, anything where the brain processes information in a way which isn't the mainstream. So how people who are neurotypical might process information. However, today we are going to be focusing on dyslexia and dyslexia in the workplace. This is an important subject because for a lot of us, dyslexia might have impacted us a great deal in school, and then you kind of forget about it and you get to the workplace and people just think it disappears or it no longer exists. Well, we know it does. So we're going to be talking about tips and tricks, what employees can do, what individuals can do, and just kind of a good overview. Now, this is our lovely team. We are 80% neurodiverse, so we are experts by experience, so we practice what we preach. We do consultancy, recruitment, we do lots of things, but our main selling point is we're a social enterprise. So we deliver things for free, like mentoring, coaching, employability skills, and we work with corporates to help them become more inclusive. So hopefully today really benefits both demographics. All right, and as I said, we do these every single week. And the one we did last week was the Competitive Dyslexic Entrepreneur, which I'm sure a lot of you would find really interesting. This is looking at why are there so many self-made millionaires that are dyslexic? Why do dyslexics tend to struggle in workplaces, but tend to thrive in their own businesses? Today, we're going to be flipping that and looking at the other side, but it's really interesting because we are going to be challenging the kind of perception that people with dyslexia are lazy, more work, more effort, and more on, well, actually, maybe if we tweak or tailor things just a little bit, you could unlock some really useful skill sets which your other employees may lack. Unfortunately, most of us probably aren't billionaires just yet, but we do have the building blocks to have those innovative ideas that might just succeed one day. So do keep them up. And remember to go on our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. So let's get to it. Dyslexia in the office. Now, disclaimer, I apologize in advance. I use an obsessive amount of GIFs from The Office America, the US series. It's really good. I've only just discovered it somehow, and I have been binging the series through Netflix, and what inspired this session. Yeah, honestly, it's hilarious. I love that kind of like dry humor, that really awkwardness. And in many ways, though none of the characters in The Office are dyslexic to our knowledge, they do share a lot of that kind of awkwardness that we typically ooze. And for me, that was one of the reasons for using this. So yeah, disclaimer, be prepared for flashing images. So first of all, let's start with something easy, true or false. And on this, you just say if you think it's true or false. So the first one is 1 in 10 people in the UK are dyslexic. Is this true or false? Then we've got dyslexia can not co-occur with other learning differences. So say if you have dyslexia, you can't have autism. Dyslexia is a neurological difference, true or false? Dyslexia can affect processing and receiving information only. So basically, dyslexia is about struggling with reading and retaining information. And lastly, you can outgrow dyslexia. Now, interestingly, we've got some mixed results here. Not everyone has agreed. And is there a correct answer? Well, yes, there is today, but can you debate things and kind of question them? Absolutely. So I'll try and give you a good all around about why this is true and why it may not be true. So let's see what at least what I said the right answers are. So 1 in 10 in the UK have dyslexia. That is correct. Asterisk. So that's about 6.3 million people in the UK have dyslexia. That is a massive amount. Why might that not be true though? Well, people diagnosing is really underrepresented. So you've seen the amount of people being diagnosed with dyslexia skyrocketing. But that doesn't mean that more people are dyslexic than they used to be. It just means that we're better at spotting the signs. But it still means that a lot of people aren't known. You know, there's so many people who may have dyslexia and have no idea. So to be honest, it's probably higher than that. But that is what most would call a conservative estimate. When it comes to neurodiversity or neurodivergence as a whole, we're looking at about 1 in 7. Well, that includes like ADHD, autism, etc. Next, we've got dyslexia cannot co-occur with other learning differences. What does co-occurrence mean? It means if you have one thing, you're more likely to have another thing. And that is actually absolutely true. If you have one, you are likely to have the other. In fact, you're twice as likely to have another neurodivergence than someone who doesn't. So yeah, and that is really important. So I don't know about any of you, but do any of you know you have another condition? So Garfield has dyspraxia, me too. Some of you might have autism, some might have OCD, might have depression, might have anxiety. They tend to go together. And it's important to realize that though you may suspect you have something else, you may not be diagnosed with something else, because you typically only get diagnosed with something if it is something which is having an adverse or kind of negative effect on your day-to-day life. So if you go to an employer and say, hey, I have dyslexia, if you're the employer, do not rule out that someone might have something else going on under the hood. Really, really common. It also makes it harder to support people because one person with dyslexia is completely different from another person with dyslexia because you have no idea of what else is going on. Then we've got dyslexia is a neurological difference. Everyone said that's correct, and it is. What do we mean? We mean it's in the head and it's how the brain connects the dots. Do we know anything about a dyslexic gene? No, but we do know it is hereditary. We do know it runs in families, and we know it's about how the brain is kind of interpreting different parts of information. So it might take longer to compute, connect the dots, solve the puzzle, that type of thing. Dyslexia can affect processing and receiving information only. That is not true. So in short, most people think dyslexia is about not being able to read. Not true. Most dyslexics can read and actually enjoy reading, but the way they read might be different to you or me. For myself, I love reading, but I really struggle to read conventionally. So I'll listen to audiobooks, I'll follow words along, I'll find other ways of digesting information. I do struggle to retain information, but for me, probably the biggest difficulty I have that's connected with dyslexia is my memory about retrieving information. So you'll actually find that, yes, it does relate to reading, but for a lot of people, that's a really small part of it. And lastly, you can outgrow dyslexia. No, dyslexia is a lifelong condition. Most people are born with it, or you develop it very early in childhood, and most people, well, you'll die with it. But it's not like a disease or a growth. It's just a different way of processing information. That being said, you can learn to adapt with it. You can learn to understand your brain better and find strategies and ways around things. It's why it might seem more prominent in like adolescence and childhood than it does in adulthood. Or it might mean that you spend most of your life completely fine, and then there'll be some sort of change of circumstances, office, like life event, and you might find that your characteristics become more noticeable, shall we say. So these are just some common misconceptions that a lot of people have around dyslexia. All right, moving on to dyslexia support. What support is available in the workplace? Some of you might say not much. Others might think that you've got a pretty good setup. But I'm guessing most people who attend today might think that there's a room for improvement. And I think that's probably a fair thing to say, no matter where in the world you're based. So I want to ask a question to all of you. How do you manage challenges in the workplace? Now, if you have dyslexia, I want you to tell me, how have you gotten around some of the challenges that come with living with dyslexia, either through your own dyslexia or how people act around you and the support they give you or their lack of understanding? And if you don't have dyslexia, maybe some examples of people you've worked with in the past, or how you have kind of worked with individuals who have had dyslexia. And I want to see this because I think we'll have a very broad range of answers and opinions, hopefully some I've never even thought of or looked at before. So how to manage challenges? I guess for me, I always look for assistive technology, apps, websites, things that can help me navigate more challenging parts of what I do on a day-to-day. We've got take more time to finish important tasks, often ask for help or use Google a lot. Honestly, Google's your best friend. It's annoying when people say, just Google it, but it does have a lot of answers. Take time to finish important tasks. Yeah, prioritization. Do what you need to do first. Let's face it, we can all procrastinate quite a bit, and it's much easier. Your brain will naturally gravitate to the easier role. It's programmed to do that, but sometimes we need to push through that kind of impulse and do the high priority work first. Okay, great. Yanni says, I support a colleague by providing cream/yellow paper, which enables her to read easier. Also ask her other ways that could help. And she has some suggestions, i.e. taking notes. Really interesting. And for those of you who are like, cream, yellow paper, how does that work? Well, essentially white and black, so text, black text and white paper is probably the most contrasty thing you could get. The colors are very different from each other, and it can cause eye strain. So for a brain which is already struggling to take written information and make sense of it, you're just adding another barrier. So by changing the contrast or the color of the paper or the screen, because it could be a digital color, it can make it a bit more comforting, a bit soother for the eyes. So it doesn't get rid of the dyslexia, it just kind of gets rid of one of those extra boundaries. So great suggestion. Garfield says, I hide it and work very late into the evening. Sadly, a lot of people do that. They do this masking thing, where like, that's fine because you want to keep up with your non-dyslexic peers. And as a result, it's going to take you twice as long, which means you're probably working longer hours, meaning you're more tired, which affects your social life. So something which might be, it's only dyslexia, actually has a knock-on effect, which can result into a big impact. So thanks for sharing that. We've got ask for concise information. Yeah, big fan of that. I really, really hate it when people write me long ass emails. If you can say it in bullet points and in a really short thing, please do that for me. It's not just beneficial to me, it's beneficial to everyone. Speaking out loud helps me think how to put what I want on paper. Nice, that's a really good suggestion. I use a lot of speech to text software, and that I find that quite useful because it makes me think more carefully about what I'm writing out. We got use quick parts in emails, use noise cancelling headphones to help concentrate when reading and writing. I also have honeycomb lenses I use outside screen covers. Oh, nice. What do you mean by honeycomb lenses? I've not used them before.
Hello, that was me.
Oh,
yeah. Cool. So traditionally you could have the tinted lenses. So you could get you different colours dependent on a colorimeter test. But I found that it's sort of highlighted and people would ask a lot of questions about them, and it could be a bit of a sensitive subject sometimes. So I've then been recommended honeycomb lenses. So they have the pattern within the lens of a honeycomb, and what it does is it scatters the light before it reaches your eye, so you're not getting that sort of glary migraine vision you would get normally if you're looking at black on white paper.
Nice, that's really interesting. And like, are they very obvious to other people that you've got the honeycombs?
No, you can't tell with the honeycomb. It just looks like a normal pair of glasses, which is really good.
I think that is important because though there is so much software and things around there for those with dyslexia, and though we obviously shouldn't be ashamed of it, no one wants to stick out like a sore thumb. A lot of people just want to like get by. So trying to make things which are for everyone. Like I always say, the best solutions for those with dyslexia are solutions that benefit everyone in the workplace. So for example, having different colored paper, that's great. But I wouldn't say just give it to the dyslexics. Otherwise, you've got like a big D sticker on your head. Make sure everyone can access it, regardless of whether or not they're diagnosed. So really great suggestions, everyone. So here's some tips on, oh, sorry, you got a comment, Garfield? Go for it.
No, it's just interesting what you've just said, because I read something the other day and it was talking about equity. So it was saying, kind of like the example you gave where everyone's got access to it, not just dyslexics. But it's they gave an example to say, for example, let's say someone's a millionaire and someone's got no money and they have to go to the food bank. There's no point giving all of them £20 a week because the millionaire doesn't need it. The dyslexic person really needs it. So you're still going to have that massive gap if you do that. But the best thing would be to give the dyslexic person the money because the other person doesn't need it. And then what you're going to have is a bit more of an equality where they could both at least eat dinner for the day rather than someone's already got dinner and they don't really need it. So it's just interesting that you've said that, which, I've only just read it.
No, and I do agree with you, but I do think, there is still some problems with the approach that you might mentioned. I'll try to explain it because I do agree with you and I appreciate you challenging me on this because I think that's important. If you give something to everyone, there's this thing that is going to bankrupt the company because you're right, the people who do not have dyslexia or the millionaires will just take it anyway. I would argue that they would not benefit from it. A lot of the things which help someone with dyslexia wouldn't necessarily help someone who doesn't have similar characteristics. So let's say you do not find glare an issue. Having different colored paper isn't really going to benefit you, so you probably wouldn't use it. Having like a special pen which read things out to you, they're really expensive. So I can see why a company wouldn't want to give them to everyone, but probably they're not going to help other people. The other thing which can get in the way is not having a diagnosis. So let's say you do not have a dyslexic diagnosis and a company might say, well, you're not eligible. By having, you can just go and pick it up and use it would benefit. I would also say that, say in the food bank analogy, you'd like to think that someone who is very well off wouldn't want to go to the food bank. Now, will there be the odd person who slips through the net? Almost certainly. But I think it's easier than saying, all right, give me all your financial papers to prove to me you do not have the money available. Because what quite happens is you might have someone who, say, doesn't have a diagnosis, or in your analogy, isn't a documented citizen, so might not be able to have access. It's complicated. So I do see what you mean. And I do know there are a lot of organizations we work with that do say, well, we don't want to make this accessible to everyone for that reason. And I still think it comes down to personal preference. I don't think there's really a definitive answer on it. But good point.
Thanks, Matt. I just read it, so I was just literally, it wasn't my idea at all.
No, it's honestly a really good question because that is some pushback we often get from employers when we say, okay, could we just make sure these adjustments are open to everyone? That is something they normally do come back with. So good point. Here are some points of why I think organizations should deal with dyslexia rather than just forget about it. So there are many benefits that come as a result of having dyslexia, but we only ever focus on the negative. So do not think I'm throwing away all the challenges because they are real, but the strengths are also very real as well. Dyslexic employees have an ability for 3D thinking. What do we mean by 3D thinking? It's such an abstract term. Well, it's exactly that, thinking abstractly. So let's say you can picture like a cube in your head. Can you like rotate it in your head and see the other side? It's about like having that imagination and about being able to see what isn't there. It's a hard thing to describe, but let's say I've got this like little Rubik's Cube thing. If I said, imagine what it looks like on the side, could you do it? You might be able to, but someone without dyslexia might find it more difficult to kind of visualize something which they cannot see. Now, this might not be the case for every person with dyslexia, but this is something which has cropped up time and time again. We've also got dyslexic individuals tend to be holistic thinkers. What do we mean by that? Quite similar, to be honest, thinking outside of the box, seeing patterns, being able to spot things. So if something's like out of place, if something's amiss, something's ajar, because all dyslexia is a different way of processing information. And yes, there are challenges, but there's also a lot of strengths that people who do not have dyslexia are going to miss. So in order to have a really strong foundation of an organization, you naturally need diverse thinkers. And the last one we got on this list, but not the last by any means, is good spatial awareness and thinking in pictures. So what do we mean by this? Well, thinking in pictures, meaning you more easily to visualize. So if you're having a conversation with someone, you might be able to think what they're saying or have those creative ideas. You might be able to pick up a pencil or a pen or start brainstorming or start creating a prototype. It's people who do not have to necessarily write things down in order to come up with the ideas, probably because they struggle with writing. So they might find other ways of doing it, which in a lot of situations when you're kind of as a group might be an advantage. So people with dyslexia might take longer to read and write, but they might be a lot quicker at speaking, thinking off the cuff, coming up with quick ideas. Now we're moving on to workplace navigating. It can be difficult out there. As someone with dyslexia, when you start a company, where do you begin? Do you disclose straight away? Do you wait to the end? Do you not bother? Is there help available? Is it going to be stigmatized? And today isn't about convincing all of you that, the world is lovely. I think it is lovely on the whole, but it still has its challenges. And those are things that we're going to be addressing. But as I said about those challenges, we do always neglect the positives. As a result, we can think quite negatively about ourselves and have a low opinion. So I just want to take a minute for you to look at this list and look at all the positives that are attached with dyslexia and rank the ones that you mostly connect with. So let's say you are an excellent puzzle problem solver. You might want to put that as a number 1. You might think, your visual memory is not so great, so you might do it as a 5. So I can just see as a group, what are our strengths? Well, when we say dyslexia, what comes to mind? Oh, struggling with reading and writing and memory. But how often do a wonderful imagination come up in your mind? Great problem solver, good at reasoning, connecting with others. These are things which are just as connected with reading and writing challenges as they are vice versa, but yet they're not the things that become the first thing we think of. And as an organization, you should learn about these strengths and learn how to utilize them. And as an individual with dyslexia, you need to start selling these skill set. Stop saying, just so you know, I've got dyslexia, here's what I cannot do. You should say, I've got dyslexia. These are the things I do really, really well. And these are some of the things that I might not find as well. So you're giving more of a balanced approach. Do not assume that the people you are communicating with know or understand dyslexia. Always assume they know nothing, or what they know is severely outdated and probably quite negative, even if they do not have a negative view openly. So I love to preach about the strengths. This isn't saying it's all sunshine and rainbows, but there is a little bit, and this is something we should really push. So let's see what we got. We've got them ranked now. Number 1, excellent puzzle solving skills. Brilliant. I am terrible at crossword puzzles and stuff like that, but I am good at Where's Wally, just essentially, if someone gives you a challenge, can you solve it? They say, here's a problem, I don't know what to do. And people who are more logical thinkers can often struggle with this. And this is something which a lot of people with dyslexia really thrive in. Brilliant visual spatial reasoning. Again, that's about how can you move things in 3D space, being able to visualize things. We've got strong visual memory. So yes, your memory might feel like a sieve when someone verbally tells you something or written instructions. But when it comes to, say, recognizing faces, photographs, pictures, anything like that, you have a really strong memory. Wonderfully imaginative. A lot of people with dyslexia tend to be great inventors, great entrepreneurs. As we mentioned at the start of today, we are really good at being successful business owners because we can create ideas and come up with the new. Now, maybe this is because we spent our entire life trying to life hack the way out of this paper bag we find ourselves in, or maybe it's inherently part of dyslexia. Either way, imagination is a key part of it. And the last one is great at connecting with others. Now, interestingly, as a group, we've rated this the lowest. But a lot of people with dyslexia tend to be really good in like people-facing roles, maybe in sales positions or connecting with the public. Because when one area takes a bit of a hit, so imagine you kind of avoid writing things down or like researching, you tend to put that kind of like leftover resource into another area, such as talking. It's why I can talk for England, but honestly, if I was to write this out in a blog, it would be unlegible. No one would even read it. So you can see the pros and cons there. Garfield says, that's my strongest point, actually, even though it's fifth. I'm really good at connecting with people. Oh, honestly, I can see that. And it is such a great skill to have. You could be the conventionally most academic person in the world, but if you can't connect with people, your success is going to be extremely limited. And those with dyslexia might struggle with school, but could really take off in later life if they find the right organization or company that can help nurture the skills they really thrive in. So here are some pros and cons. And that is always important to understand the highs and the lows. So for me, the biggest con of dyslexia, and you can tell me yours, is most people find it difficult to retain information with time pressure. If you say, okay, here's the deadline, get it done now, I already know my brain has to work twice as hard in order to kind of put words together, join the dots. And if I know there's pressure, my brain just kind of implodes and nothing gets done. On the other hand, though, the strengths which I find that I most resonate with is having a wide variety of thought. Some of my ideas are ridiculous, they're like, that is insane. But you need insane ideas. Like one of the best examples, which is a classic, but think of when someone went up to Henry Ford, who created Ford Motormobiles, and said with the horse and cart, I need a faster horse. Do you think anyone would have thought about making a car? They're just completely different things, but they serve the same purpose. And that is what dyslexics are really good at. They're about, okay, seeing the picture from a different perspective. Okay, so maybe we should get a giraffe, I don't know, gorilla to ride. No, we'll create something out of metal that can move, can navigate. And the next great invention, there's so many things that have been invented by people with dyslexia. Like Richard Branson has nearly 500 or 800 companies that he has created or owned. We've got different space organizations. Some people think Alexander Bell, who created the telephone or stole the telephone, was a pioneer in that. There are honestly countless examples where a different thought pattern has changed the game. And we've also come up with unique solutions that others may not have considered. So yes, there are cons, and I never run away from them. It would be a disservice to say dyslexia is all about hidden talents. It is a disability, and for a good reason, because it can be quite debilitating. But that doesn't mean that we need hand-holding. It just means we need the right support in the right profession to get the best out of us. Okay, moving nicely on. The history of workplace dyslexia. History is always important because if we don't understand history, we're doomed to make the same mistake time and time again. Now, who thinks dyslexia has a positive history or a negative history? Pretty negative. Yeah, it really is. And that's important because this kind of way of thinking, mud sticks. And a lot of the things we believe to be true, they filter through history. even when they have long stopped being any sort of fact behind it. And that kind of thing of dyslexia has kind of followed through in history. So we need to understand the biases and the negative attachments that come with dyslexia, basically the baggage, in order to kind of realign people's way of thinking. So how has dyslexia been seen in the workplace? If we're talking originally from the dawn of the working time and understanding dyslexia up until now. So on here, I want you to just write down how you think people have seen dyslexia in the past. Like just some words that have come to mind. So, for instance, I think a lot of people have seen dyslexics as time wasters, as lazy. Just get those words out. Even though they're negative, the fact is if people are thinking them, we should be aware of them, because then we can learn how we can alter their way of thinking to have a more well-rounded viewpoint. Okay, not a real condition all the time. Yes, it is more complicated than life-threatening or not, but as we learned today, it does filter through to everything we do. Time-consuming, yeah, it takes longer to achieve the same thing. Unprepared, haven't done their homework. Scatty, I used to get called scatty natty all the time. We've got costly, stupid, inconvenient, bad at grammar, lazy, not a real condition, incapable, less productive. And all these words, unfortunately, are attached to us. So when we go to an organization and say, hey, just want to let you know I have dyslexia, unfortunately, we've got a rucksack with all these words in. And that is why people do not disclose. Now, in a company that has a good culture, a good understanding, has been educated, these words will not be there. They'll be eradicated with proactive, with innovative, great at 3D thinking, great communicator. But it takes a while to kind of move these words out of people's subconscious. So it's important that we at least recognize them. So companies have often had misconceptions of dyslexia. And just like all of you said, they are all true, and there are others as well. So the first one is dyslexic people have low self-esteem. We all think, okay, the struggle is real. And as a result, this has had a knock-on effect. It is true, a lot of people with dyslexia can have low self-esteem, but others who have been able to find ways around it, find little life hacks, do know their strengths. Having low self-esteem and having dyslexia aren't part of the package. It's not part of the condition. If you have low self-esteem, you have dyslexia. It's people who do not understand dyslexia and put these low expectations on. So this is created by society, isn't inherently part of dyslexia at all. Dyslexic people are lazy. If you've been really lazy, people say, oh, I bet they're dyslexic. No, they aren't lazy. It takes longer to process, and the way their minds are able to get to it can take a little bit longer. But again, that isn't part of dyslexia. It's like, the old expression, if you try to get a fish to climb a tree, you'll always think that it's stupid. Fishes aren't meant to climb trees. And that's the same with people with dyslexia. The way their brains work, they find it more challenging to do certain tasks in a certain way. So is there a way we can mix up and say, okay, I actually want you to swim instead of climbing? You might be surprised, but they might be pretty good at it. So dyslexic people are not lazy, but it's normally the way they are told to do things do not complement them in the best way possible. Their performance is lower than their colleagues. So you ask your colleague to do something who doesn't have dyslexia, they're going to complete their job 10 times faster and at a much higher level. Very similar to the last one. Well, yeah, it can be true, but maybe you aren't given the role which is right for that individual. Maybe you aren't giving them the correct tools to do what they do in the best way possible. Take me, for example. I can struggle with writing. If you ask me to write an essay or a paragraph, it's going to take me a long time and there's going to be lots of mistakes. However, you give me, say, Dragon, which allows me to talk to my computer and write it out, I'm going to be able to write till the cows come home because I've got the vocabulary. So it's finding a different way of expressing myself. That's about having the best tools. And as Garfield mentioned, might work later in the night, try to compensate. That's isn't a good long-term solution. So what can we do to make people feel that they're not behind? You know, is there more support we have available? They are easily distracted. What? No, that is a bit, distraction is a great thing. We just do not see that as a strength in society. Being able to continuously come up with ideas. An office job where you're sat on a bum and here's the one task, do it now and do it well, it might not be great. But in a team meeting, when you're coming up with ideas, you're innovating, you're problem solving, being easily distracted and kind of being able to go off on a tangent is a very, very good point. So you need someone who's like that in an organization. I think often we try to just make things so streamlined can be very difficult. Employing dyslexic people will cost more. That, unfortunately, is something that I've seen time and time again. Employers think, you know, employing us is like doing their social responsibility. Like we're helping the planet right now. No, hiring a dyslexic, you know, are there things that need additional costs? Maybe, but often in the UK government, you can get a lot of it paid for free anyway. But even if you have to pay, the benefit that you get from a result of it is 10 times. So let's say, you know, you need that software that turns your speech into text. Is it expensive? Yes. But will it improve productivity? Absolutely. So you are saving money. It is an investment. You've got to be able to see the bigger picture. Now, how can dyslexic adults upskill? We talked about the challenges and about finding the right role, but let's be real, in the world we live in, not everyone is able to make those adjustments. And it's not like we're incapable of learning and adapting. It just might take us a little bit longer. So how can we adapt and grow and upskill to suit our needs the best? But before I move on to that, quick comment from AK. I think the distraction happens because of the struggle to follow the tasks at hand. We need a way out. It's not like ADHD. Very, very good point. Though it does sound a lot similar to ADHD, the reason why the brain gets to that stage is very different. And I think that is, people often get those confused. It's a really good point. So here is just some examples of assistive technology that can help people with dyslexia upskill. It doesn't take the dyslexia away, but it does mitigate the negatives and really push the strengths. So have any of you used speech to text? That's when you talk and the computer writes it out. Have any of you used text to speech? That's when you like highlight your work and it will read it back to you. Hello, I am reading the text back. It's like a robot. Have any of you used colored overlays? Now that could be like physical bits of paper where you go over and it changes the color. It might be paper which is a different color, or it might be a digital one where it just changes your screen like a bit of a blue. I always use like purple or blue. Different colors work for different people. Or you might use advanced spell checker. So there's like global autocorrect, there's Grammarly, software like that. And again, none of these get rid of dyslexia, but it takes away some of the pitfalls of it and allows you to operate at a higher level. Like all of these make me better at my job, arguably better than those who don't have dyslexia, in my humble opinion. So you can actually make yourself better at what you do, better than your peers, not just level. Speech to text just feels weird. I gave it a shot, but it's not for me. Honestly, it really isn't for everyone. It took a lot of getting used to. And for me, I felt very self-conscious about using it in public spaces. Since working remotely and on my own, I feel a lot more comfortable using it. So none of these are a miracle solution, but you're absolutely right. They can work for some people. We've got, unfortunately, schools used to see dyslexic students as lazy, unprepared, and all the other things that were mentioned. Yeah, and I think we've come a long way in educating teachers, but we have a much, much longer way to go. From my last understanding, a lot of teachers I know only received 1 day of dyslexic lessons on how to best support dyslexic students. 1 day is not enough. So we need more work in that, absolutely. Okay, we're all doing good. Yep, we're getting there, everyone. So these are some technologies that can help. These are just like the tip of the iceberg, but text to speech. So there's free ones like Natural Reader. If you want that one, you can just go on a website, type it in, and it reads it back to you. For a free bit of software, honestly, it's not bad. You also have blah, 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 that one. Not the most dyslexic friendly to read, but also free and worth a go. If you've got a bit of money in the bank or you're able to kind of find a grant, Claro Read is pretty good. On Mac, it's completely free anyway. I use the Mac one mostly and I like it a lot. When I'm on a PC, I use Claro. You've got speech to text, which there's, again, free. Okay, no, the free ones aren't good for that, but you can use, say, Google or Siri and talk to your phone. That works quite well for shorter sentences. And colored overlays, again, it can be a physical thing or it can also just be a digital one. And top tip for colored overlays, if someone just gives you yellow and it doesn't work for you, try different colors, because our eyes all absorb different colors of the light spectrum in different amounts. So it's always worth finding the color that works best for you. I didn't find yellow that useful for me, but I found blue worked quite well. Okay, now on to the employers. Let's stop putting all the emphasis on the dyslexics. You know, this is an equal part to play. How can employers help? Now, before I go into some top tips what employers can do, I want to ask some of the dyslexics out there. Are there any things that you have found that have really helped you that employers have done? Or are there things which they've not done which you think would be really helpful? Anything that could be really helpful if an employer did. Acknowledge the situation. Yeah, just acknowledging, you know, just saying, okay, I understand you have dyslexia. That is a good starting point. Sometimes they just like shove it under the carpet or they choose not to really take it seriously. I don't think many employers are necessarily out to get us, but I do think maybe they have a outdated or no understanding of what dyslexia really is. Give more time for something challenging. Yeah, there'll be some tasks you do quicker than others, but there'll be others that are more challenging. So maybe give you more flexibility. As long as you get this done at the end of the day, I don't care how you prioritize it or like when you put the time in for it. You got learning more about the condition? Absolutely. I do so much training for corporates, but I normally do one training and then walk away. This is a lifelong thing. It's always changing. We're learning new information. Keep learning. It is just as much your responsibility as it is the individuals to understand how to support them. Allow more time to settle into new jobs and tasks. Yes, the onboarding period might take a bit longer, but it's been proven the retention rate is far greater. So it is definitely beneficial. Given tasks that are more suited of our strengths, completely. I think roles are far too rigid at the moment. They should be flexible and fluid. Wait until you find the right place for that person in the company. Everyone will be more happier. Really, really good shout outs there. There are some top ones that I would recommend is if I was to say employers, what are some things that you should walk away with after today? You need to know that dyslexics have a high work ethic. We always talk about all the negatives, but one of the biggest strengths I've seen is they've spent their whole life grinding, you know, swimming upstream. Their work ethic, if they've gotten this far, is above all. Because you typically, you know, you end up either not meeting your potential or you go way beyond it. So in type of a lot of positions, which I imagine a lot of you are in or hoping to get into, your work ethic is going to be at the top. It's not expensive to hire people with dyslexia. There are so many grants available for software. And like I say, the benefit you get as a result is far, far worth it. The biggest expense to hiring those with dyslexia is not doing anything at the start, waiting until the very end when someone is at breaking point. If you support them at the start, it's not going to be expensive at all. Encourage dialogue with managers. You need to have a good rapport with your team. If you do not, they're not going to disclose to you. And if they do not disclose, you can't support them. So you've got to have that good relationship. Adjusting to computer settings. Again, the vast majority of adjustments are completely free. Your computer can read things back to you free anyway. You can change the contrast on your computer for free anyway. There's many things that can help. Having extra time. Let's not be so rigid on these tests. Using access to work. If none of you are familiar with that, definitely look it up. It's a government grant in the UK, which gives like money for assistive technology, so companies do not have to pay. Making sure that any equipment that you do offer, training is given. So often be like, oh, they've got access to all this like reading majiggies, but have you done any training for it? No. If you don't train someone in using it, how can you expect them to just learn? Detailed training, research, assistive technology. One thing which I found quite a lot is the employer puts the emphasis on the individual. You're dyslexic, you should know what you need in order to get support. That's not how it works. It's like working together. The individual needs to learn about what works for them, and the manager, the employer needs to learn about what works well for other people typically, and then kind of like meet in the middle. Coming to the end now, last one, your legal obligations. We're not just talking about what's good to do, nice to have. There are legal obligations which employers do have to follow. And yes, we are talking about the UK today, but a lot of countries do have similar policies. So do your own research if you are outside the UK. So first of all, it is a person's personal choice if they want to disclose that they have dyslexia. You cannot force an individual. You cannot just go up to them and say, I think you're dyslexic. No, you've got to create an environment where they feel comfortable. In an ideal world, they would say, because they would feel comfortable. They wouldn't see any negative repercussions. But as we learned today, there is bias and stigma attached. If the person does not disclose, you are still needed to make adjustments. You know, if it's very clear that the person is struggling, you need to help them. If it's not clear, then that's when it gets a little bit murky. But under the 1995 Disability Act and the Equality Act 2010, if someone has declared they have dyslexia, you do have to make reasonable adjustments. It's a so-called hidden disability, so-called because it's not an official term, but hidden disability is something which you cannot see, but affects someone. And dyslexia might not be the most severe disability in the world, but it is one that is going to affect every single element of someone's working life. So you need to make those adjustments. You make those adjustments because it doesn't just benefit the individual, it also benefits the company and the organization. But also if you do not do it, you can get sued. And, you know, that's a right palaver. Do you really want that on your record, that your organization refused to give adjustments to someone because you didn't believe that they needed it? The Equality Act 2010 has been a great piece of legislation that has done tremendous amounts. Is it perfect? No, people are still discriminated against, but at least we have something we can fall back onto, that you are breaking the law if you choose to not do any adjustments within a reasonable area. Obviously, you're probably saying, but Nat, what is reasonable? That is a grey area. Typically, it's anything which doesn't have a severe negative effect on the company's finances. So let's say you want something that costs like £100,000 in order to help you be your best at the workplace. That's not really reasonable. But if you say, just want to have extra time or some like software which can allow you to get your views across that isn't going to bankrupt the company, that's very reasonable. And also there's software and grants. I think Access to Work, though typically is about £3,000 to £4,000 of support they offer, you can get up to like 50,000. So this really shouldn't be a block. Be prepared though that the large amount of money is normally for like really severe things like needing like a personal assistant. But for dyslexia, £4,000 of software will normally cover most things that you need anyway. So just to summarize, all of this lovely research was done by Garfield, and here is our bibliography to prove that we got some facts. So do check it out in your own time. And it will also be on our YouTube video in the comments, so check it out. But to summarize, if any of you do think, wait a sec, I want support. You mentioned this Access to Work thingy a lot. Do get involved. It's basically a workplace needs assessment. You need a job. If you've got a job, you're eligible. Then you have an assessment, only takes an hour. Then you apply for the grant, nice and simple. We do it if you go via exceptional individuals, and then we deliver the training. This counts as a reasonable adjustment. It's free to do. And honestly, as an employer, you'd be silly not to promote it, particularly in the UK. If you're a company that has a lot of money, I would recommend going private. It's a lot quicker. But if you do not have that, there is still support available. Oh yes, AK's really loved the gifts today. I'm really pleased. I thought I overdid it. But I like, who doesn't love a good gift? Now, just to look, any last comments or forever hold your peace? Nice, we answered that one. I'm happy with that. And some last little things, some icing on the cake to polish it off. The one we're doing next week, which is really popular, by the way, it's really resonating with people, is ADHD in the workplace. Similar to today, but we're going to be going into more detail about how this translates to ADHD. We also have all these recordings uploaded to our YouTube channel, Exceptional Individuals. Just search for that, or like and subscribe, ring that little bell. You know the drill, and you can catch up on them. This one will probably be uploaded in about a week. And we also have Facebook groups where people kind of share a community, share tips and tricks. Just type Exceptional Individuals Opportunity Group and join that. We've got a nice little community growing there. And the last few things is, if you're on LinkedIn, nice and professional, worth doing it. If you're not, you can join our group where we'll share job opportunities, different funding availabilities, all that sort of great things. And yeah, you can do little tests online. And there, we've made it to the end. If you have any further questions, you can always just drop us an email, go to our website. Like I said, we support organizations, corporates, as well as individuals trying to get into the workplace. I hope you all found that useful, a couple of top tips, and thank you all for adding to the discussion. It's been absolutely great having you as always, and hopefully see you next week for ADHD in the workplace. Bye, everyone.